enough to introduce us. My name is Peter Cleary. I am the CEO and founder of Red Mountain. We are a strategy and innovation design agency, and design thinking underpins everything that we do. So if it's okay, I might just jump into this session. And Katie, do we establish, can people use the chat functionality? Sorry, I didn't see anything come through.
I haven't seen anyone being able to pop anything in the chat. Una, were you able to pop in a question through the Q&A function at all?
No, I wasn't able to hear anything there. I logged off and on, so I can just hear you now.
Lisa's back. Yes, the chat is now working. Sorry, Una, I can see. Yes,
okay.
It is. It might have been because I hadn't hit start meeting yet. Hi, it's good to see you. And people can put their cameras on. I was definitely sure I allowed all this to work and it wasn't working. But we're gold. We're gold. Okay. Excellent. Far away.
We have a party, Katie. We're off and running. Fair play. And thanks, Una. You leave it to a Tipperary person to sort it out, and a fair play to you. Okay, so just to take you through, I'll get through the introduction quite briefly. In a moment, I'm going to hand you over to my colleague, Evelyn Hayes, who's going to run an energizer with you. We like energizers in workshops for two reasons. One, it's fun to have fun. Many of you are taking time out of work or are squeezing in a meeting. So, it's nice to enjoy it. But also, the energizers are a great way of encouraging the behaviors that we like to see in the workshops. Evelyn will make sense of it in a moment. Slight spoiler, Evelyn has some vouchers to give away, so we do encourage engagement through light bribery. Evelyn's going to take you through the 5 stages of design thinking. We're going to focus on the first 3 today. We will take questions in the chat throughout. If we can answer your question then and there, we will. If the question probably is better suited towards the middle of the session, we'll do it there, or we'll capture at the end. No questions will go unanswered. It would be a bit hypocritical if we were here running a design thinking session on communication and we ignored your communications to us. Evelyn's going to hand back to me for the Emphathise stage, which is the first stage of design thinking. There are 5 in total. We'll do 3 today. I'll touch on the define stage, and then we'll spend a lot of time on the ideation stage as well. What I would say, and look, I noticed a few people on the call that I know from past lives. It's nice to see you again. Design thinking might be a new thing to some people. There's a lot of information being shared today. We will share the materials. We have 2 handouts to give you as well, which we won't cover today. And we're also going to give you the option to book some time with us as well if you'd like to. If you're feeling in any way overwhelmed or thinking this is not for me, pop the questions in the chat. See if we can discuss that together. As I mentioned, we will take questions at the end. So these are not rules. Design thinking is about collaboration. We don't do rules. Collectively between Evelyn, Bridget, and myself, though, we have designed and facilitated over 300 design thinking workshops at this stage. Evelyn, is a bit like our age. The number is only always going up, unfortunately. These are some of the things that we find will help you get the best out of the session today. So, if possible, be present and eliminate distractions. If you can, put your Teams and Outlook on Do Not Disturb, or maybe your phone on silent. If you can't, it's your time. Please use your time as see fit. Enjoy the exercises. A happy mind is a creative mind. There's lots of science to back that up. We do a separate piece on that. Make sure to ask your key questions, but as is a large call, please stay on mute when you're not speaking to the group, but do feel free to pop your questions in the chat. Again, we'll monitor it, we'll answer them whenever we can. And there'll be a lot of conversations and knowledge being shared, so please do jot things down. Your reflections are your key takeaways. We'll talk about that as one of the key parts of communication a little bit further on. Ev, without further ado, I might hand over to you for You Gotta Be Jargoning Me.
Thank you very much, Peter. And yes, as said earlier, the main reason we do our energizers at the start is because they are a good bit of fun. And that is also why I end up presenting them, because I like doing the fun parts. But if we go on to the next slide, it is also because obviously this call is all about communication. And I am sure all of you have gotten the situation before that you have jargon in your company that other people may not understand, or I'm sure maybe when you started at a new company, your first day, people were using 3-letter acronyms, which I can never say properly, and you had no idea what they were saying, and you're like, oh, I'm never going to learn all of these, and now you find yourself saying them as well, and maybe new people will look at you all confused, and you, what is this person saying? So the Energizer today, all companies come with a lot of terms, and all around jargon, and it can be really confusing. All we want to know is what is either your least favorite, the one that really annoys you, or your favorite jargon terms that now exist. So for example, one of the ones that really annoy me is out of office, which is obviously OOO. because every time I'm reading it in an email, it just comes, I'm just like, oh, I am on ooh, and I'm really wondering what this ooh is. But obviously it means out of office. And for a little bit of an incentive, or you can read it as bribery if you would prefer, we have a €25 Amazon voucher to be given away to the one that we like best, or the one that Peter has decided that is his favorite. So please start popping in your jargon, any of your 3-letter acronyms, into the chat, please. WFO, AO. I don't know what most of these mean. So I'm going to say WFO is work from office. Did I make that up? AOB. Can anyone hazard a guess of what that could be?
It's that was me. It's any other business.
Any other business? Oh yes, I should have known that one.
I
PIS.
had a man. What is PIS? Can people write down what the acronym stands
This
for
is the
as
fun of it as
well?
well. We get to guess them. I also don't know what FYA means.
It's like FYI, but with an A.
I'm not even going to try and pronounce any of those words
Owen Caffrey
that
put in
Owen
there.
put in. No.
I'm even more confused when I see the definition.
Yeah, sorry.
No, don't
Close.
apologize, Owen. It's the perfect example.
For your advice or for your actions, I like that. Of course, until it gets confusing and you're like, am I meant to be doing an action, or is this person trying to give me advice? I think that sums up your SME one as well, Peter. You never know if it's an expert or a small company that you're talking to.
I like tar. I thought people were saying thanks.
They're not?
Like, yeah, no worries.
Are they not saying thanks, Katie? I don't understand. What does it not mean? Thank you?
Apparently not. For your advice. Aha. Objectives and key results.
TBD. Yeah. Okay.
I write down a lot of things.
Right, we've got a good few in, Peter. I think I will pass to you to decide on our winner for today.
I'm going to give it to Owen Caffrey because I actually can't. I understand the explanation less than I understood the acronym. And it's not a bad thing, Owen. It's a perfect example of some of the things that go on in work that we don't fully understand. So, Owen, Katie will be in touch. We'll send your voucher to the email address that you register with. So, well done, Owen.
Well done.
Sweet.
Brilliant.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Well done, Owen. Can you say it actually for bonus points?
Yeah, it's piezo impedance spectroscopy.
Very good. It sounds kind of Italian or something.
I'm going to start saying that when I want people to think I sound smart. That's going to be my new one, even though I don't know what it means. But moving on, we are now going into our design thinking with silos. And the first thing I want to go through exactly what design thinking is. So if we go on to the next slide, you can see that I have a definition of design thinking up here on the top. And honestly, there's many different definitions of design thinking, depending on who you talk to, what websites you're on, what experts are discussing it. There's many different definitions, but the one thing that they do agree on is that it is human-centered problem solving. So it's all about the users. It's all about the people who are using whatever it is that you are building, that you really want to do that human-centered approach. There's 5 stages, as you can see here. We have the Emphathise stage, the define stage, ideate, prototype, and test. And that really gets through the user needs. It's generating ideas, you're prototyping, you're testing, and you can see here that we have all these lines behind each of the stages. This is to show that it really is an iterative process. So you could start off with the Emphathise stage. You can go the whole way through to test, and then you could decide, actually we need to go back a couple of stages, or we need to go back to the very, very start because we got something wrong, or we need to do something again just to get it right, because it's really, at the test stage, you could be talking to those same people that you talked to at the first stage, and they could be saying, no, you've gotten it wrong. And because it is a human-centered approach, you're taking that into account and you're going back to the very start and trying to get it right. So the first stages that we will be focused on today, the first one is the Emphathise stage, and this is super, super important. So this is all about talking to people, figuring out what their problems are, understanding what their pain points are, figuring out where they're coming from. And you'll see later that this really ties into absolutely everything you do and is really a key part in communication. And then that leads into the define stage, which you really can't do until you empathize first. The define stage is all about, at the start, when you get your problem, you will think it's a certain thing. But once you talk to the users, talk to the people, bring in this human-centered problem-solving approach, you empathize with them, you'll most of the time find that the original problem that you had isn't actually what it was. And you have to redefine what that problem was in order to solve for it. That leads into the ideate stage. So once you have empathized with everyone, you know what's going on, you've defined your problem, you know exactly what the problem is, exactly what the pain points are that people are experiencing. This is where you start to solve for it. And ideation is all about, trying to get a wide range of problems. At this stage, you really kind of diverge, get as many solutions as possible. And it's only at a later stage that you start kind of refining them down a little bit more and saying like, oh, this will work, this won't work. Maybe if we add this to this. So it's all about, as we like to say, and Peter will be going into this later, it's all about quantity over quality at this stage, which I'm sure most of you haven't been heard before. It's normally the other way around. But this is really trying to get all the ideas you can as possible. And then we also have the prototype and the test stages. I won't go too much into them because for today we're going to focus on the first 3 stages of design thinking. But prototyping and testing, it's all about building out your ideas, checking with those original users whether they work, and then reiterating as needed. So I'll go on to the next slide because I'm sure some of you are thinking, I don't really care about this. How does this apply to me? It's all design stuff. But great teams follow this process, such as the design thinking process. It mirrors the methodology and it'll give the same results. So, you'll get these things like the data-driven insights. You'll get multiple perspectives. You'll be able to see things through different people's eyes. And then finally, you should hopefully get some practical next steps, or even if those steps lead you backwards, it'll still go there. So for the empathize stage, it's all about understanding each other. Teams need to empathize with each other's constraints and pressures rather than placing blame when things go wrong, which then leads into the define stage, which is all about figuring out what the actual problem is. Teams need to move beyond symptoms, just saying like, oh, this is this person's problem, this is this person's problem, and actually put them all together to define the actual challenge that they are all trying to solve at the same time. Because at the end of the day, you're all trying to solve something here. You're not just saying this is this person's fault, this is this person's fault. And then the next stage will lead into ideating. So this is all, you're generating these solutions together. It's not just a matter of one person is saying, oh, this is how we're going to fix it, this is what we're going to do, and everybody else has to continue on and help with this no matter what. You're all working together to try and do this. Then in the prototype and the testing stages, so this is how you test things quickly and safely. You make scrappy little prototypes. You can do things on paper, see how it works. It's so that you're not putting all your investment into one thing just for people to turn around and say, no, this actually doesn't work. And then finally, in the test part of the process, you learn and adapt together. So yet again, you're figuring out, where is this feedback coming from? Why are people giving this feedback? How do I make something different that I'm not getting the same bad feedback? Instead, build something that everybody can use. And I think that is everything from me. And now we are going to go a little bit further into the rest of the stages. So Peter, I will hand back to you.
Cheers. Thanks, Evelyn. So a lot of theory there. And like all learning, we're actually going to try and apply some of it because that's how we actually retain information. We mentioned empathy almost in every single workshop, and depending on the organization that we work with, the reaction can be varied from the feeling stuff to actually some of the communication stuff that's going on below the level. But before we kind of jump into the hypotheticals, if I can give a scenario, like if trust is broken between teams, like this is hard, like we get that. For example, I'm on my 4th career now. I've worked in a number of corporations. Have you ever sent a simple email request to another team and then got a formally written reply CCing your boss and half the company? You're going, how did this happen? I was just asking Frank when the deliverables were due, kind of a piece. Have you ever come up against information hoarding? What are the reasons for that? The key, communication is the end result. The messaging, the emails, the status updates, they're the end result of what has happened beforehand. And design thinking is the way of unlocking the understanding of actually, how this actually came to where we are. Before we jump into the kind of theory of the of design thinking, but just get some reaction for the group. Again, Ev, it's been a good engaging group so far. What do you believe empathy to be? Please write down the first thing that comes to mind. Your brain is very clever. It might, and sorry, Owen, because I'm looking at you, I'm going to use your name. Owen, it'll go, actually, if you say this, you'll sound a lot smarter. Don't do that. Just say the first thing that comes to mind, because that's typically the truth. Answers in the chat, please. And because it's a nice day and it's actually sun is out today, Ev will pick a winner for the most honest answer. We have another €25 Amazon voucher to give away. Ev, you can pick the one, and again, just pick it at random. So what do you believe empathy to be? Please pop your answers in the chat.
Honestly, if Owen puts that, what was it, PIA in again, I think I'm just going to give that the winner. Shared understanding, I think, is a great succinct way of putting it. Being able to put yourself in others' positions, definitely.
A great answer, Ashley. And hello, Ashley, as someone who's gone through this process together before. Things before taking. Yeah, I love that one, Louise. Consider others' feelings before taking action. Often communication can be very reactionary, and sometimes we need to step back and actually relax on it a bit before we say anything. Choose being what someone else is going through deeply. Oh, I love that last one, Samantha. I'm missing clearly understanding the background to the message. Yeah, I agree completely with you on that one, Tom. Ev, do you want to pick a winner?
Yes, I think Louise really embodies everything that we were going through today. So Louise McSweeney, I think. Consider others' feelings before taking action. I think the taking action thing really got it for me there.
Very fair. Well done, Louise. We'll pop
Louise.
we will pop your voucher in the post. Right, we'll keep moving, and this is going to be a very enjoyable one, Ev, because I think they have a lot of the concepts that we were trying to share with them already. Okay. So like all learning, it's when we can anchor in it in our own reality or in our own day-to-day that it actually sticks with us. So we've tried to come up with a scenario that we believe is relevant to in a regulatory, in a medtech or a pharma scenario. You may have encountered part of this or all this before. If you haven't, and this hasn't happened before for you, we'd love to hear about questions or feedback on that one. But the scenario, and Ev, I'll ask you to pop this slide into the chat afterwards as well, just as a prompt for the next slide. So your scenario. Your company has a critical regulatory submission due in 6 weeks. 3 key departments are involved. So firstly is the design team. So when they hear this news, the design team's reaction is, we need 2 more weeks to be perfect the data package. Rushing this could mean rejection and months of delays. The regulatory affairs teams that say the submission window closes in 6 weeks. Missing it means waiting 4 months for the next review cycle, which kills our market launch timeline. And then finally, the manufacturing team says, we have already ordered materials and scheduled manufacturing based on the original timeline. Changes will now cost us €500,000 and disrupt other project lines. So these are the communications. So these are the surface level things that are reacting, when this update goes out. So let's try using an Emphathise exercise on this one. So instead of deciding who is right or wrong, and this came up so many times in the chat, Ev, it was great to see it. Put yourself in each other team's shoes. So if I give you a prompt, right? So design thinking helps, uncover what's going on below the surface. So if you use the classic iceberg analogy, 10% of the iceberg is above the water, 90% of the iceberg is below the water. You're in your ship sailing along. What you really need to be worried about is the 90% below the water. If you hit the 10% at the top, you'll scratch the hell out of the boat, but the 90% below the water will stop the boat dead. That's the real, that's the real challenge. So let's put ourselves in our team's shoes. So in the chat, write down one sentence describing what each department is really worried about beneath their stated position. So just to be clear, the exercise is to write 3 things in the chat. Again, I'm looking at Una. Sorry, Una, I'll pick on you if you don't mind. Una, would you please write in design is worried about, regulatory is worried about, and manufacturing is worried about. Just pop your answers in the chat. There's no wrong answers here, just based on your own experiences, and we'll have a bit of discussion about that.
Yeah, it's interesting to look, and do you know something? It's really not uncommon. It might be the same scenario in every sense that everyone's dealing with, but definitely everyone's got those competing priorities.
Yeah, exactly.
And I don't know whether we actually do always start with empathy, to be fair. I think we possibly start with our own agenda. And
No, but ultimately, Katie, and it's your good point, like at the end of the day, everyone wants the same thing. It's a safe patient. You know, so how does everything get so muddled along the way?
Yeah. I don't know.
Interesting one, Lisa.
I don't know. Did Una realise she was going to have to work as hard?
Sorry, Una.
Not perfect on my spelling for typing.
No, that's I noticed
Oh,
you've removed me on LinkedIn already, Una. Fair play. I would have done the same.
I've what?
You blocked me on LinkedIn there, did you as well? I just noticed. So fair play.
Yeah.
The proper communication.
Yeah.
This exercise is not easy, gang. As you can see, the first two are just warm-ups. This is actually getting you to think like the others. Someone's worried about regulators. Oh. It's very clever, Tom. Design is worried about perfection. Regulatory is worried about missing market launch. Manufacturing is worried about spend forecast being missed. So again, that's a great example, Evelyn, of like the surface below the surface level things that are bubbling up.
And it is interesting, you know, Evelyn's point of people don't necessarily know the depths of what you do. They're like, sure, all they're to do is make this document like it appears.
It just happens. Yeah.
Yeah.
Just draw the picture.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's design summed up right there, Evelyn, isn't it?
Yeah.
Louise, designs. Don't worry about rejection, submission. How it will affect them. Oh, it's very clever, Louise.
I definitely agree with all these seeking perfection comments as well.
How does it go, Evelyn? Perfection is the enemy of the good, and we never get anything done.
Oh dear.
Yeah. And actually, I find out Abdullah's ones are quite external. You know, they're worrying about meeting the market demands, customer trust. The reason for rejection could be because of design, because they hurried it through. Do you know?
Abdullah, sorry, and to make this a safe place, Katie, Abdullah and I are old friends. Abdullah, is this stuff you've experienced firsthand yourself, or you observed it in around you?
I think just experienced it, but also observed it in terms of how people would work towards that line. And at the end, it's all about getting the product to the market, and everything sort of goes down from that.
Okay, fair, very well put. Thank you.
Yeah, no one's talking about fear.
And that's a key part in design thinking, Katie. It's that psychological safety. It's where like mistakes are embraced as a learning opportunity. Like make a mistake once, you learn from it. Make the same mistake twice, then you have a problem. But like preventing a lot of that is that fear of failure. We'll never take a risk or a chance. And I'm not saying a patient risk or a chance like that, but it's almost, as Evelyn mentioned, at the start of the process, it's about volume. It's as many ideas as possible. Don't shut things down before you've even explored them. Design about errors, practice where about missing the boat cycle. Excellent answer, Janice. Thank you very much for that one. Okay, we'll keep going if that's okay, Katie. So the group, as we can see, are they're not new to the idea of empathy. When we did the exercise previously, a lot of people thought about how you put yourself in other people's shoes, how you actually pause before you speak, and how you react, and actually to process as well. So we were just going to share a couple of things that, some practical ways that we think you can use empathy on a day-to-day basis, both in your team communications, but also in the larger projects as well. As always, delighted to hear feedback and reactions, and particularly from you as well, Katie. You've experienced far more of this industry than we have. So ways to empathize and gather data, so it's actively listening. So ask open questions. Too much of our communications are us pausing and waiting for our chance to speak. Irish people, and I'm happily an Irish person, I don't think we're good at this sometimes. You can often see it, like, you're saying something. I'm going to look at you, Evelyn, because I need to look at someone for this one. Like, Evelyn is speaking, I'm just nodding and nodding and nodding, and all I'm doing is waiting for Evelyn to pause, and then I jump in and start talking. That's not communication. That's grandstanding. And then it's equally, if you ask open questions, you can delve below the surface, like what's really going on here. If you ask yes/no questions, you'll get a very closed mindset. But if you ask open and leading questions, you might find out things that you weren't expecting to hear. So actively listening will be a huge one. Exactly, listening to react versus listen to understand. Exactly, Evelyn. Observe, so what, like read the body language, listen for tone. There's loads, and it's actually quite scary in some ways. There's loads of research to suggest, between 90 and 93% of communication is non-verbal. So am I sitting here with my arms closed, leaning back in my chair? I'm probably not here to talk. I'm here to tell. Or am I looking at you, smiling? Are my hands open? I'm probably in much more collaborative mindset. Tone is a huge thing. Like between how we pitch our tonality can completely change the message that's been delivered as well. And then our last one from the practical point of view is data. And this is an engineering and scientist group here. Like without data, you just have opinions. So gather data, use it correctly. It's not just gathering data and leaving it sit on Excel and say, oh, we've done all our data gathering, and then we ignored it. In design thinking and workshopping, data is a huge accelerator of collaboration. So one, it's a great way of gathering opinions, anonymizing them, and playing them back to the group, and ultimately to accelerate decision making. It's very easy for one person to dominate a single conversation in a room with many people. But if you're presenting data to the room and says 85% of the people in this room agree that this is the way that we're going to go, it's very hard for one person to dominate that conversation there. So huge advocates of data. And then, so we're moving then from the empathy stage. So if empathy, and Evelyn, please do feel free to come in here. Empathy is wide. Empathy is about understanding all the possible things that could be happening. In the define stage, we're starting to filter it down. Okay, so what's actually going on here? Like, what is the root cause here? And how can we move from blame to shared collaboration to solve? So you've truly empathized with each team. You can now look to refining the problem. So if you think about the problem we had at the start in our scenario. So originally, you might have looked at the problem as, we have a deadline conflict. Design wants more time, regularly wants a fixed deadline, and manufacturing has already committed resources. We need to decide who wins. The idea of winning is a very traditional agile waterfall project management approach. In a collaborative design thinking mindset, many teams can have the same shared goal. This one person wins, it doesn't fit well in the design thinking world. So, however, after you've empathized with each team, you could reframe the problem as a how might we statement. If you've done any reading on design thinking, or even if you put it into ChatGPT immediately, how might we will come up within the first two sentences. It is the anchor question of the entire theory, and all design thinking is anchored around it. The how might we essentially becomes your shared goal. So, for example, in this case, how might we create confidence and transparency across departments so that teams can make informed decisions together rather than operating from fear of blame and reputational damage. So again, it's collective. It's moving from the negativity to going, how can we solve this together? So what changes? Before the Empathize, we were talking, the problems were time and deadlines. This group very quickly picked up on the fact that there's other things going on here. So once we had empathized, we were actually thinking about trust and communication and shared risk, moving away from that blame to how do we work together? How do we address everyone's underlying concerns? And the mindset moves from win-lose scenario in the previous scenario to much more collaborative problem solving. Again, the theory is good, but we'll actually try and show you a little bit of the application of it today. We are covering a lot today, Katie. I'm fully aware of that. Just to reinforce the group, this has been recorded. We will share the materials. We have 2 other handouts for you as well. And at the end, if you decide, look, we'd like to talk to some more in the future, we'll share our calendar details as well. We're very much in the discovery stage together. You might be thinking about something that you'd like to solve with design thinking, but not know how or where to start. Come say hello to Evelyn or myself. That's part of the process. It's figuring it out together. So we're going to move to our last stage today, and we're running slightly ahead of time, Katie, which probably is not a bad thing. I don't think anyone complains about getting off a virtual meeting early, but we will leave lots of time at the end for questions. So we're going to move to the ideation stage. So if we think in empathy, we're nice and broad. We're gathering all the information we possibly can. In the define stage, we've moved to our how might we, which is our goal, which is essentially telling us where to focus. Now we're going to ideate, and we're going to go wide again. Ideation is easily, well, in my opinion, because I don't have to do the tidying up afterwards. That's Evelyn. I love the I love the volume. It's the raw energy that comes with creating ideas for possible solutions. So we'll send these out. But these are just a couple of things that we think, are relevant when it comes to ideation. This could be in a one-to-one scenario or in a group scenario. Again, we'll share these afterwards. The first one, there are no bad ideas. I can't underline that enough. At the start, as Evan alluded to, it's about quantity. Get as many possible ideas in as possible. There are so many examples. We have a couple of you today that ideas were potentially bad ideas to begin with that suddenly became brilliant ideas. So, for example, in the 1960s, 3M were working on an initiative to develop a super strong adhesive. A scientist called Spencer Silver was championing it. He failed miserably, like it was the least adhesive glue 3M had made for a long time. One of his colleagues, though, Art Fry, thought of another way of using it. He saw the value in creating a temporary adhesive, and he was actually using it to anchor bookmarks in his choir hymnal. This was the birth of the sticky note. I guarantee anyone in an office now, there's sticky notes all around you. 3M make thousands of brilliant products. The sticky note is literally their anchor product, and that one nearly went in the bin. And then probably a bit closer to home, Seidenfeld, Viagra, again initially invented by Pfizer. A couple of Pfizer people on the call. It came from a failed heart drug to a blockbuster. It was meant to treat angina. Failed miserably. The scientists noticed some interesting side effects, and the rest is history. Our second rule, so capture everything. We talked about this at the start. At the start, it's volume, 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 volume. My brain doesn't retain everything. Like genuinely, I only get to a certain point of where I can retain maybe 5 to 10 new things a day. After that, they just fall out. As a working example, like remember when we were doing homework as kids and wondering like, I'll never need this. Like, why am I learning this? But the process was solid, even though the outcome might have been what we expected. So when we write things down or when we apply them or when we type them or voice note them, however you capture information, it's how the brain builds neural networks and anchors the learning to retain the information. So in ideation, write things down, they'll disappear. It's reinforced by our good friend Spencer's post-it notes in the previous slide. Two more. So hybrid brainstorming works best. So this is the idea of do some silent thinking individually and then do your group thinking together. Again, and there's no, I'll use an acronym, EV, because we had the acronym game. You might have heard this one, Katie. It's the HIPPO. It's the highest paid person's opinion. So often in a room, the HIPPO will dominate the conversation. It may be the boss. They might be just a very strongly opinionated person. If that starts at the initial point of the ideation will struggle because you need to get as much volume in as possible and to allow for all personality types. So I'm obviously an extrovert. I like to talk and move around a lot. Some of the most brilliant scientists and inventors I know, they're introverted, they're analytical. That means they probably step back a moment. They want to process information before talking. So we would strongly recommend if you're running an ideation session, do some silent thinking, bring it to a group, and then collectively agree how you want to take forward. We've all been in this scenarios. You've been in a room where you can't think over the noise. And similarly, have you ever been in a meeting and not been able to get a word in as well? That's a meeting. That's a different scenario. That might be a status update. Our workshop is very different. And then our last rule, and then we have a couple of outcomes for you. So as Evelyn mentioned, and Katie, this might fly in the face of some of the good practices we have in pharma and medtech, but quantity over quality. It's all about volume at the start. Don't worry, when we get to our prototype and testing stages, that's when we refine back down again. We're actually where we de-risk everything. And then if there's any questions in the chat, I'll let you feel them. I see them popping up there, but you let me know if I need to pause for a moment on anything, or feel free to come in yourself. So quality over quantity. You may have heard of Robert Langer. He was a famous MIT professor. He had over 1,400 patents filed. Most of them went absolutely nowhere. So were we thinking Robert Langer was an absolute failure? Far from it. And the slide is not big enough for his inventions, but two of the most pertinent ones. So Robert Langer is accredited with essentially inventing the controlled release drug delivery system and the foundational tech behind the mRNA vaccine delivery, championed by Moderna. I think we can all agree, without Robert Langer and his perseverance of quantity over quality. Same for Einstein. If you look at any Edison, Einstein, they have such a back catalogue of ideas that just went nowhere. But then 1 in 10 was brilliant. 1 in 100 changed the world, you know, so quantity, quantity, quantity. And then I keep going. So that's a lot of theory. Again, what we would say for any of this is to try it, right? So normally, and we don't have time today, unfortunately, Katie, if we had you for 2 hours, we'd do the ideation with you. We'd show you how to do that volume. We'd show you how to encourage all types of ideas. You know, we show you how to remember things and ultimately how to get to where you're going. But today we'll give you a cheat code, if that's okay. So we'll give you the outcomes. So think of the scenario. So the scenario presented at the start where we had the 3 teams, design and regulatory and manufacturing, essentially at odds with each other. In the initial scenario, and I don't see anyone called Carl on the call. If there is a Carl, this is nothing personal, Carl. Don't worry. In the next slide, you're going to be the hero. In this slide, you're the villain, unfortunately. So the teams have done their empathize and define stage. Carl is essentially the team's boss, or he's the director of the area, and he's been put in charge in deciding how to solve the problem. So after identifying the trust and transparency problem, the boss thinks overnight and announces the solution the next morning. He might be your classic hippo in this scenario. Carl's decision. So I figured it out. We're implementing weekly cross-departmental status meetings every Monday at 9 a.m. All 3 department heads will report progress to me and each other. This will solve our communications issues. Hooray for Carl. How do we think that one worked out, Katie? I won't give the giveaway, but what would your reaction be on this one?
Do you know, it does seem like a very typical kind of band-aid that would have been put on that type of communication situation a lot. And because nobody's been part of making that decision, I'm not sure anyone else except for Carl is going to be delighted about it.
And disclaimer, gang, I didn't actually show Katie the slide in advance, but let's see if you're right, Kate. Thanks for playing the game. So the results. So design, their reaction. And again, the communication is the surface of the problem. Great. Another meeting where we get grilled about timelines we can't control. Oops, one tick down. Regulatory, this doesn't help. We need real-time data, not weekly summaries. And in manufacturing, Monday mornings are our busiest production time. This is impossible. As you alluded to, Katie, it's a band-aid. What's ultimately the result here? Low engagement, people find workarounds, and the problem persists. There's this perception that we're doing something, but ultimately we haven't involved the people who live the change in the actual decision making. So your scientists, your engineers, your researchers, Katie, how many times have you been asked your opinion on something in a survey, in a meeting, and then you don't know what happens with the information and you're not involved in the next stage? It's a common pitfall for us all. Do you want to come in on that one, Katie?
Do you know, I'm just thinking one of the things that because it's happened to me loads of times, this type of something's not going well, so they put in a meeting and you're like, you've got a lot of work to do, and half the problem is there's a lot to do in a short amount of time, so the answer they're giving is taking more of your time, which you're kind of, they're going, and then at the end of the meeting you don't really feel like you got anything out of it, but you're like, I could have used that half an hour that you just took from me to do something far better. So yeah, it's ringing bells.
Yeah, that's your hybrid brainstorming, Katie. One of the rules, the 3rd rule we said, like, give people time to silently think on problems, then come back to collectively talk about solutions together. Okay, so that's Carl. So don't worry, if you're Carl in the audience, you're about to put on your Superman cape, you're going from villain to hero in scenario B. So Carl is going to bring a designed thinking
that expanded into a forest. He didn't plan to venture into the forest, for he did not know this land. He just needed a place.
That is a really interesting audiobook there. Design thinking is about the ability to react to your environment and not be thrown off by that. But I'd be interested to know what that gentleman was listening to. Okay, so in the second scenario, Carl is going to put on his design thinking hat. So Carl brings all 3 teams together for a structured ideation session focused on the real problem. Remember the anchor question? How might we create confidence and transparency so teams can make informed decisions together? So the process that we've just described. Teams brainstorm together, building on each other's ideas and sharing their experiences. They also ideate silently at first before taking turns sharing their solutions. Again, we put together a structured framework where it allows everyone to speak. Again, just don't let the extroverts and the drivers dominate. The winning idea ends up coming from Brenda, who's usually very shy and doesn't speak up in meetings often. Myself and Evelyn have a kind of a set rules of how to spot Brenda. Brenda's not a real person, by the way. They're often the amiable or introvert or analytical people. They won't dominate a conversation from the start. They'll think about it, and then they collaborate and they get data. So many of the best inventors and entrepreneurs today are analytical or introverted. Bill Gates, Elon Musk, regardless of his politics. There's so many examples of great entrepreneurs who don't jump up and start shouting at the start. So watch out for the Brendas in your group. They really are gold. So Brenda's idea. What if we created a shared submission readiness dashboard that shows real-time traffic lights for each department's key milestones? Green equals on track, amber equals needs attention, and red requires team discussion. Anyone can see it, and we only meet when something goes red. Katie, how do you think this one went?
Well, I think we've made the decision together. So I've already agreed to it as part of being part of this brainstorming. And then I know that the only reason I am meeting is because from whatever we've agreed in terms of what makes something a red, that it needs my attention. So I've already said that I want to be part of that. And actually, I might even feel upset if you didn't include me in the red. So do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I think I definitely feel more on board for this.
Okay, let's see if Katie has the right answer. So what do our teams think? So design, perfect. We can show our progress transparently without the constant questioning. Design just want to get on with it. Our regulatory team, brilliant. I can see exactly where we stand at any moment, again, addressing their key concern. The manufacturing team, love it. We only get pulled into meetings when there's actually an issue. Again, Katie, you covered nearly all of these. Well done. And our outcome is, well done, Carl. High buy-in, practical solution addressed, and addressing real concerns. And in a practical way. So if I can touch on one thing here, look at the three teams' reactions. The solution isn't impacting upon their environment, their day-to-day in a negative way. They can actually absorb this into their current work. 90% of all change fails because of people buy-in. You know, particularly in MedTech and Pharma space, if you have technology and funding, that's fine. It's out of the way. You have your approval. Actually, change is hinging on people's buy-in at this point. So the best way to keep people's buy-in is keep them involved in the process right through, as Katie has alluded to. Okay, we have 2 more slides today. And last of the theory slides. So if you ever do a storytelling workshop with us, and I hope you do, because it is a fun one, this is the anchor statement. So what? Who cares? Why are you telling me this? I am incredibly busy. I run pharma teams and medtech teams. I'm in the regulatory team, or whoever you might be. Everyone has something in their life that is pulling them away from this call. But your teams are brilliant, but sometimes they communicate differently. Evelyn, we had so many good answers on the empathy piece about understanding multiple perspectives, pausing before you react. This is a good empathetic bunch. What design thinking changes? So it's faster decision making when teams understand each other's real concerns. So again, iceberg, the communication. I'm just going to use Abdullah because he's my old pal there, right? Abdullah has told me flat no, he's not going to turn up for these status meetings anymore. He doesn't think they're a good use of his time. Why? What's the 90% of the below surface on that one? If that was me, I'd be looking to speak to Abdullah in a kind of more of a in a one-to-one environment and understanding, look, what's going on below the scenes there, Abdullah? What are we not seeing in the emails? Less rework when problems are caught early through collaboration. So design thinking is a wonderful way of surfacing opportunities, but it's also, for the project managers on the call, it's a wonderful way of figuring out the roadblocks that are coming down the road. Most of them will be people related. Higher engagement when people feel heard instead of blamed, as an obvious one, but also celebrates personalities and ideas. To Evelyn's rules, like there's no bad ideas. It's quantity over quality. And one thing we didn't, Evelyn, which I love, design thinking has no levels. So like it doesn't matter if you're an analyst or a director. If you have a great idea, the process will highlight the idea. It doesn't champion the person. It literally, when you run it through the process, it's literally the one the most practical and is the one as the most realistic outcome of coming to life. That's the one that gets celebrated. And effective communication is the key to all of the above. So without that, and I stress effective, and I'm a devil for it. Talking is not communicating. Talking is just broadcasting. Actively listen, look for tone, check for body language, ask open questions, get data. What's going on behind the scenes? That underpins everything that we do. Whew, sorry, Ev, I'm running out of oxygen. That is the last of our theory slides. So we are going to do one more slide, Katie, if that's okay. And then we'll just pause for questions. So communication is multifaceted. We usually find when we do these kind of overview sessions, they prompt thoughts that happen afterwards. So if you have questions now, we'd love to see them in the chat. We will deal with them. Equally, if you'd like to chat afterwards, Bridget's going to pop the link to our booking tool in the chat there. We don't do the hard sales pitch. That's not how design thinking works. If you chat and we can help you, great. If there's a way that we can collaborate together, great. If we have a chat and at the worst we just make an interesting contact, that's also great. So like, don't ever feel that if you haven't fully thought through a challenge or opportunity, or maybe I don't like that redheaded lad, he talked too much. Evelyn seemed much more interesting. Feel free to put in the notes, I'd rather speak to Evelyn. I won't take any offense. And just as a bonus, because you've been a wonderful audience, we're offering a free 2-hour workshop on any relevant topic to the first person who books time with us. In the chat there, Bridget's popped the tool in. Katie, you might send around our details afterwards as well. I'll stop for questions. Ev, you might help me here. I haven't been looking at the chat. Have we anything that we need to address now?
No, we're safe at the moment. So if anybody would like to pop any questions into the chat, or even if you want to just come off mute and ask us, please feel free.
Yeah, please do ask questions. You make me think, actually, Peters, do you know, we are an empathetic group, we already pointed out, and, you know, we've obviously, you know, we're probably all good listeners, probably all have some really great things, but sometimes when you get into I think the day-to-day, you shift into what I call an automatic mode. It's like this schema that we have where we've got this level 1 thinking where it's just the automated stuff that we do. And to kind of pull yourself out of that and have that sense of self-awareness, get into that deeper thinking where you're thinking about what you're saying and doing, how it's affecting others, or being curious about the people, requires you nearly to switch off that automatic setting and move into that, you know, that deeper thinking mode, which, you know, it's very much self-management and self-regulation in order to do that effectively. But yeah, it's a habit you have to form, I think. Do we have any questions? Sorry, babbling away.
No, you're not at all. And if I could reflect on that, Katie, like, you know, how does the cliche go? Like, if you've always done what you always do what you've always done, you'll always get what you've always got. Like, you know, and sometimes it can be hard to switch from the operational day-to-day stuff, which, if we're frankly honest, Katie, often gets us rewarded in work. But, you know, design thinking is a different way of approaching a problem from multiple angles. And then, look, just to, if I could leave it a personal one, if there's no questions now, that's absolutely fine. We can take them by email or later on as well. Design thinking is a wonderful way of designing your career as well. I read a brilliant book about 10 years ago. It was called Design Your Life. And essentially, like, you know, is like the basis of it was, you know, design the future that you want, or you'll end up sitting in a future and you don't want, and it's too late at that point. And your design thing is a wonderful way of, like, what are all my options here, and how can I make this personal for me? But to answer your question, finally, Katie, after talking for 2 minutes, when we run design thinking workshops, and if anyone's thinking of doing a workshop with us, what we'll often do is we'll start the ideation with a hypothetical scenario, similar to the one we gave there as well. So it allows people the freedom to move away completely from the rules, Katie, that you mentioned in their day job. So it's a design around a hypothetical thing that's not related to their company. We'll do that for 30 minutes. Then that opens up the minds. And then the second part, then that's when we can move to the specifics. Okay, now let's apply this to Medtronic. Now let's apply this to Pfizer. You know, so it has to start with, like, that freedom, because you're right, Katie, because we do live in a very rules-based society.
Thank you, Peter. We have a question in the box. Can you read that, Peter?
I can indeed. What's the most common mistake leadership makes when they try to implement cross-functional collaboration? Ooh, that's a bit of a minefield, that one. Thanks for that one, Bridget. Again, if we start with our empathy stage, so it's particularly, and Katie, I'm guessing we have, you know, we have lots of multinationals here. It's understanding that not all parts of the organization work in the same way. So, for example, if I am in the manufacturing hub in Ireland, and I have offshoring in Singapore, and ultimately I report to an office in North America, that's 3 very different styles and ways of working as a starting point of view. You know, so understanding, like, who your users are, and they may not work in the same ways, is a starting point. Ev, do you want to come in on that one?
I think a big one that I have seen is fear of being uncomfortable. I feel a lot of the time, particularly when people hear the word workshop, and if there's any sort of interactive elements or ways of doing something that isn't necessarily just sitting around discussing it on a Teams call, you know, a lot of the sticky work, a lot of the exercises we would do, I feel sometimes people are a little bit scared of them, and worry too much about maybe not getting the results they want. And I feel like it's that fear that of being uncomfortable or people thinking that the exercises are silly or that they're just a bit of fun with no results will actually stop leadership from getting that result.
That's an excellent answer. Thank you very much. Ashley, how do you balance moving at speed while bringing others along the change journey? Yeah, that's an important one, Ashley. I think, for me, and Eva, I'll take your point of view on this one, but for me, it's a balance of like your quick wins, your medium-term wins, and your long-term ones as well. So ultimately, change is based on progress. So when we're doing our ideation, actually, we'll often bucket our ideas into 3 groups. What are the quick wins? What are the small things that we can, we can roll out in the next couple of weeks or months that'll, allow people to feel involved, but also to show momentum as well. Our medium ones are, they're the ones we might go back to our board of management or directors, and our long-term ones ultimately are the ones that will need significant funding as well. But for me, change is about momentum, and that positive momentum of, so Ashley, can you imagine if, and I'm making things up on the spot here, if in September, we have an ideation session, you present a number of ideas, 3 of them are long-term, 2 of them are short-term, and within 6 weeks, you see 2 of them being rolled out or being discussed at a leadership level. It's just that transparency and consistency. But Ev, anything from you on change?
For me, with this one, I think going back to the design thinking and making sure it really is that human-centered approach. I think the way to keep the speed going is to preempt who the people are in the organization or whoever you're working with that are going to have the biggest opposition to the change, and try and bring them along the journey with you so that they feel a bit safer in all the changes that are being made. And it's not just a kind of like, oh my God, everything's different now. But they can actually see the benefits of the change, why it's happening, and being involved in how it's happening as well normally lets people move a bit quicker and offers less resistance.
Very good.
That's also, I think, Katie.
Yeah, I was thinking of that middle question around the mistakes, and I really felt for what Evelyn was saying around, it's the phrase people coin now is psychological safety. And I think one of the things people do is they have lovely things written on the walls, and they say that we've an open door policy, and they say lots of nice things. But the way you react in the moment to other people tells them how you actually feel. So be wary of what you celebrate, how you celebrate, what you punish, how you punish, because that's telling people how you actually feel versus what's written on the walls. And if you want to create a psychologically safe environment, you have to be mindful that you don't create fear. So that, when Sarah had an idea last week, it got shot down and the boss was grumpy with her. I'm not going to have an idea today. Do you know? So that's one thing I would say. If you want people to not play the blame game, not CC people on emails, and not be afraid and be watching their backs, make sure that you create that environment, because ultimately you've the power to do that as a leader.
Fair. That's a very well made point, Katie. It's ultimately walking the talk of what you're saying. It's easy to put inspirational quotes all over the room, but when you get into a meeting and it's pure waterfall, it's a different scenario. Owen, you have a great question. How do you build a room that isn't full of Brenda characters or lots of hippo types? Many teams in my organization can have similar personalities grouped together. It can be tricky to get people engaged with workshops, etc., from both sides. Ev, you take this one to start, because I have a thought on this one.
Well, this is actually a piece we do a lot, Owen. I'm really glad that you asked this. We do a workshop that is solely around how you identify kind of your character type and how you interact with others. So it's always super interesting that some people that you think might be a certain type might actually be completely different. And it really goes through how they work together, how to get the most out of them, all that sort of thing. So it definitely is possible. But, we've also had situations before where we've had a whole room full of hippos. I still think that's an amazing abbreviation. And, you do a bit more of the silent approach in the workshops where everybody's just writing on stickies, and you do get a bit of pushback. People want to talk, they want to hear themselves being heard, but it really is all about managing both the virtual aspects, or if it's an in-person thing, just all about the stickies really. But Peter, you might want to add on to that.
No, it's fair. And Owen, if you're interested, please do send me a note on LinkedIn. But we do a piece of work on social styles. So it's understanding the 4 social styles: analytical, amiable, driver, and expressive. And, we do a simple test about how you can self-identify people as those and just about getting the balance right. So in some workshops you have to just invite everyone from a certain team. In other workshops, you'll actually get to select the participants. And when we work with our stakeholders for the first time, we really do get a balance of people in the room as well. So if it's interesting, Owen, I can send you some details if you want to ping me on LinkedIn. There's no problem at all. And it's a great question. Because groupthink can be both intoxicating and toxic at the same time. So if you get a bunch of expressives like me in the room, and this will drive Evelyn and Bridget on the call mad because I do it all the time. This is the best idea in the world. Oh, we're going to do this. And then I go, how are we going to do that? And then I'll go, oh yeah, you're right. I didn't think about the delivery at all. So anyway, it's a great point. If there's no questions, Katie, we might wrap up because it's nice to give people a couple of minutes back, unless you've any words to close.
Yeah, no, that's fantastic. And it just, that point just made me think of that conversation we had the last day. There is such thing as recruitment bias. So if you find there's a lot of people that are all the same in the team, it might be because the manager was hiring themselves over and over again.
Exactly. That's exactly it.
Yeah, so be sure, as if you are a people manager and you do recruitment, to try and hire a mix of people in your team in order to get some Brendas as well. For myself, I just want to say thank you very much for everyone for coming today, and thank you very much to the guys here at Red Mountain